That is not for people like you. The voice hit my spine like ice water. I didn't even have to turn around to know who it was. That nasal, condescending drawl had haunted my nightmares for 2 years, and now, here it was, loud and clear in the middle of the Aurora Grand Mall. I tightened my grip on the midnight blue velvet blazer I was holding. It was Italian silk, bespoke, and carried a price tag that looked like a phone number. It was perfect for my husband. I said. The voice came closer, accompanied by the click-clack of designer heels and the heavy scent of overly expensive cologne. Put it down, Benita, before you sweat on it and have to pay for damages you can't afford. I took a deep breath, counting to 3. 1, 2, 3. I slowly turned around. Ethan Carlisle stood there, looking exactly the same as the day he left me on the side of the road in the pouring rain. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my old tuition, his hair perfectly coiffed, that familiar sneer plastered across his face. Hanging onto his arm was a woman I recognized instantly from the tabloids, Hannah Kim. She was tiny, gorgeous in a plastic sort of way, and looking at me like I was a stain on the pristine marble floor. "Ethan," I said, my voice calm. Much calmer than my heart, which was currently trying to batter its way out of my ribcage. "I see you haven't changed. Still making assumptions." He laughed, a sharp, barking sound that drew the attention of a nearby sales associate. "And I see you're still wandering into places where you don't belong. What are you doing here, Benita? Did you get a job as a cleaner? Or are you just window shopping for a life you'll never have?" Hannah giggled, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. "Is this the one? The charity case?" "The very same," Ethan smirked, stepping into my personal space. The air around him felt suffocating. "Look, Benita, I know it's tough. I know I was the best thing that ever happened to you, and losing me must have been devastating. But don't embarrass yourself by pretending you can shop at the Aurora Grand. This isn't the thrift store." I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm not pretending anything, Ethan. I'm shopping. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a purchase to make." I turned back to the rack, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from a rage so cold it burned. He reached out and snatched the blazer from my hand. "Hey!" I snapped, reaching for it. "Security!" Ethan shouted, his voice echoing through the high ceilings of the boutique. "Security, we have a problem here." The store went silent. Other shoppers, women in Chanel suits and men in Rolexes, stopped to stare. The humiliation washed over me, hot and prickly. It wasn't just about the jacket. It was the memory of being powerless. The memory of him holding all the cards. Before we see how deep this hole gets for Ethan, if you've ever had someone try to make you feel small just to boost their own ego, do me a huge favor and hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you want to see exactly how karma works when it finally catches up. A security guard, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, hurried over. "Is there a problem, sir?" "Yes," Ethan said, puffing out his chest. He tossed the silk blazer onto a display table carelessly. "This woman is harassing us. She's delusional, likely trying to shoplift, and she's making my fiancé uncomfortable. We are VIP clients here. I want her removed." The guard looked at me. I was wearing a simple cream cashmere set and loafers. No logos. No flash. To the untrained eye, I looked plain. To someone who knew wealth, I looked expensive. But Ethan didn't know wealth, he only knew flash. "Ma'am," the guard asked, hesitant. "I was simply looking at a jacket for my husband," I said, keeping my voice steady, though I wanted to scream. "Husband?" Ethan let out a loud, incredulous guffaw. "Oh, please. Who did you marry, Benita? The manager at the gas station? Did you finally find someone desperate enough to take on my leftovers?" The insult landed like a physical slap. My mind flashed back to 3 years ago. The rainy night in Mapo District. I had just lost my teaching job because of budget cuts. I was 3 days late on rent. I went to Ethan, the man I had supported while he finished his MBA, the man I had cooked for, cleaned for, and loved with every fiber of my being. I remembered begging him. Ethan, please, I just need a little help until next month. Just until I get my visa sorted. He had looked at me with that same cold sneer he wore now. I can't be weighed down by a failure, Benita. My father expects me to marry up. You're dragging me down. You're not enough. You never were. He had kicked me out of his apartment. I spent that night in a 24-hour cafe, nursing a single cold brew, crying until I had no tears left, scrolling through job boards on a cracked phone screen. That pain had nearly broken me. But it hadn't. It had forged me. I looked at Ethan now, really looked at him. I saw the insecurity behind his eyes. I saw the way he gripped Hannah's arm too tight, like she was a prop. You have no idea who I am anymore, Ethan, I said softly. I know exactly who you are, he spat, leaning in close, his breath hot on my face. You're nobody. A gold digger who failed to dig. Now, get out before I have you thrown out. He grabbed my arm. Hard. That was his mistake. Before I could even pull away, two shadows materialized from the periphery of the store. They moved with the silent, fluid lethality of predators. A hand, large and heavy as iron, clamped down on Ethan's wrist. Ethan yelped, his grip on me instantly releasing as his arm was twisted behind his back with agonizing precision. Aya! What the hell? Ethan screamed, dropping to his knees. Standing over him was Han Dae-sung, the head of my personal security detail. 6 feet 3 inches of stoic Korean muscle, dressed in a black suit that cost more than Ethan's car. Next to him was Jin Woo, looking equally terrifying. Dae-sung didn't look at Ethan. He looked at me. His face was a mask of professional calm, but his eyes were checking me for injuries. Ma'am, Dae-sung said, his voice deep and rumbling like distant thunder. Are you injured? Did he harm you? The entire store was frozen. The security guard had backed away, hands raised. Hannah was shrinking against a display case, her eyes wide with terror. I rubbed my arm where Ethan had grabbed me. It would be bruised. Do-Hyun was going to be furious. I'm fine, Dae-sung, I said, adjusting my sweater. But this man seems to think I'm trespassing. Ethan was groaning, his face pressed against the polished floor. Let go of me. Do you know who I am? My father is Horace Carlyle. I'll sue you. I'll have you arrested. Dae-sung applied a fraction more pressure, and Ethan's threats turned into a high-pitched whine. Release him, I said quietly. Dae-sung hesitated, clearly wanting to snap Ethan's arm like a twig, but he obeyed. He shoved Ethan forward, sending him sprawling toward Hannah's feet. Ethan scrambled up, red-faced, dusting off his suit, trying to regain his dignity, but failing miserably. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You hired thugs? You think this makes you special? You're going to pay for this, Benita. I'm calling the police. I wouldn't do that if I were you, I said, picking up the velvet blazer from the table where he'd tossed it. I smoothed out the fabric. And why not? He snarled. My phone buzzed in my purse. A specific ringtone. Deep, rhythmic, demanding. I pulled it out. The screen lit up with a single name, Yobo. Honey. I looked at Ethan, then at the phone. Because I answered the call, bringing the device to my ear. My husband is on his way up. And he hates it when I'm late for lunch. On the other end of the line, the voice was low, smooth, and dangerous. Benita? Dae-sung just alerted me that there was a situation. I'm in the elevator. Tell me, who do I need to destroy? No one you need to destroy yet, I said into the phone, my eyes locked on Ethan. Just a minor annoyance. A fly buzzing around the fruit. Flies should be swatted, Do-Hyun replied, his voice a low vibration against my ear. I'm 30 seconds away. Stay with Dae-sung. The line clicked dead. I lowered the phone, slipping it back into my Hermes bag. Ethan was dusting off his knees, his face twisted in a scowl that looked even uglier against his rich, dark complexion. He ran a hand over his fresh fade, checking if his haircut had been messed up in the scuffle before straightening his tie. His ego was clearly bruised, but his arrogance was terminal. He just couldn't help himself. A minor annoyance? Ethan stepped closer, though he kept a wary eye on Daesung. Is that what you call the man who made you? You really are ungrateful, Benita. I took you out of that cramped apartment in Queens. I showed you what the high life looked like. And now you're playing pretend with hired muscle. Hannah chimed in, her voice grating. Ethan, baby, let's just go. She's crazy. Look at these thugs. No, Ethan squared his shoulders, trying to look imposing next to my silent, towering bodyguards. I want to see this, husband. I bet he's some old, washed-up businessman you trapped. Or maybe he's a criminal. That would explain the goons. I didn't answer. I didn't have to, because at that moment, the air in the boutique seemed to vanish. It wasn't a sound that alerted us. It was silent. A sudden, heavy drop in atmospheric pressure that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The chatter from the hallway outside ceased. The sales associates stopped folding clothes. The glass doors of the boutique slid open. Park Do-Hyun walked in. He didn't stomp or stride with unnecessary aggression. He moved like water, fluid, inevitable, and terrifyingly calm. He was wearing a three-piece charcoal suit that fit his broad shoulders like a second skin, the jacket unbuttoned to reveal the slate-gray vest underneath. His dark hair was styled back, severe and elegant, highlighting the sharp, aristocratic cut of his jawline and the cold, predatory intelligence in his eyes. He wasn't alone, but he might as well have been. Two more men trailed him, but Do-Hyun consumed all the oxygen in the room. He didn't look at Ethan. He didn't look at Hannah. He didn't look at the security guard who was now trembling visibly. He walked straight to me. The world narrowed down to just him. His scent hit me first, sandalwood, sea salt, and something metallic, like rain on hot pavement. Benita, he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the store. Do-Hyun, I breathed out, the tension I hadn't realized I was holding in my shoulders finally releasing. He reached out, his long fingers grazing my cheek, tucking a loose curl behind my ear. The touch was so gentle, so at odds with the violence radiating off him, that my knees felt weak. Did they touch you? He asked. He was looking at my face, but his eyes were scanning my body for any sign of harm. I'm fine, I assured him, covering his hand with mine. Daesung handled it. Do-Hyun's gaze flicked to Daesung. The bodyguard bowed his head deeply, a sign of absolute submission and respect that he had never given to anyone else in my presence. He grabbed her arm. Sir, Daesung reported, his voice devoid of emotion. Right side. Do-Hyun went still. It was a terrifying kind of stillness. The kind of stillness a tiger adopts right before it tears a throat out. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, Do-Hyun turned his head. For the first time, he looked at Ethan. Ethan, to his credit, didn't run. But I saw the color drain from his face. He blinked, looking at Do-Hyun, then at the men behind him, then back at Do-Hyun. I could see the gears turning in his head. He recognized the suit. He recognized the power. But he didn't recognize the man. Ethan played in the waiting pool of wealth. Do-Hyun owned the ocean. You, Do-Hyun said. One word. It sounded like a death sentence. Ethan cleared his throat, puffing out his chest in a pathetic attempt to regain control. Yeah, me. And who the hell are you? You need to teach your woman some manners. She assaulted me. I was just trying to have security remove her for harassment. Do-Hyun tilted his head, his expression unreadable. My woman. You're, whatever, Ethan scoffed, gesturing vaguely at me. She's been stalking me. Clearly hasn't gotten over the fact that I dumped her 3 years ago. I'm Ethan Carlisle. My father is Horace Carlisle, CEO of Carlisle Logistics. Maybe you've heard of him? We're very well connected in this city. Ethan dropped his father's name like a nuclear bomb, expecting everyone to cower. Do-Hyun stared at him. Then, a corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't a smile. It was a crack in the ice. Carlisle Logistics, Do-Hyun repeated, testing the words like they were foreign. He looked over his shoulder at one of his assistants, a man with glasses and a tablet. Director Min. Do we know Carlisle Logistics? Director Min tapped his tablet screen twice. Small-cap shipping firm based in Incheon, sir. We acquired their debt portfolio 3 months ago as part of the sector consolidation. Technically, you own their outstanding loans. Do-Hyun turned back to Ethan. I see. Ethan frowned, confused. What? What are you talking about? You don't own anything. Look, pal, take your girlfriend and get out. You're disrupting my shopping. Do-Hyun took a step forward. Just one step. Ethan flinched back 3. You grabbed her arm, Do-Hyun said softly. He wasn't asking. She was causing a scene. Ethan's voice cracked. I was just escorting her out. Which arm? Do-Hyun asked, his voice dropping an octave. What? Which arm? Ethan swallowed hard. I don't remember. Look, this is ridiculous. Come on, Hannah. He grabbed Hannah's hand and tried to step around Do-Hyun toward the exit. Do-Hyun didn't move his feet. He simply lifted his hand. Instantly, the 2 men behind him stepped in front of the door, blocking the exit. Hey, Ethan shouted. This is false imprisonment. You can't keep us here. I can do whatever I want, Do-Hyun said, his tone bored. He turned back to me, his eyes softening instantly. My love, the jacket you were holding. Is that for me? I blinked, jarring back to reality. Yes, the midnight blue one. Do-Hyun gestured to the sales associate, who was currently trying to merge with the wallpaper. Wrap it up. And the black one next to it. And the cashmere set my wife is wearing. In every color. Wife, Ethan whispered. He looked at me, his eyes bulging. You married him? Yes, Ethan, I said, my voice strong. I did. But, look at him, Ethan sputtered, gesturing at Do-Hyun's tattoos, which were just barely peeking out from his collar, ink that signaled a history far darker than corporate boardrooms. He looks like a gangster. Do-Hyun walked over to Ethan. He moved into his personal space, invading it completely. He towered over Ethan, making my ex-fiancé look small and soft. Mr. Carlyle, Do-Hyun said, his voice silky. I am going to give you a very brief education. In my world, we do not touch things that do not belong to us. And we certainly do not touch the queen. I didn't know, Ethan stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ignorance is not a defense, Do-Hyun said. He reached out and adjusted Ethan's tie. Ethan froze, terrified. You hurt her arm. That makes me very unhappy. And when I am unhappy, the city tends to bleed. Do-Hyun's eyes bored into Ethan's. Apologize. What? Apologize to my wife. On your knees. The store went deadly silent. Ethan's jaw dropped. You're crazy. I'm not getting on my knees for her. She is Benita Park, Do-Hyun cut him off, his voice sharpening like a blade. And you are currently standing on the ground that I own, in a mall that I own, breathing air that I allow you to breathe. Kneel. Ethan looked around desperately. Security. Do something. The security guard looked at the floor. 3, Do-Hyun counted. I'm not doing it. Ethan yelled, trying to muster some bravado. My father will hear about this. Do you know who he knows? He plays golf with the mayor. 2. Do-Hyun unbuttoned his suit jacket. Ethan, Hannah whispered, tugging on his sleeve. Just do it. Please. He's scary. No. Ethan shook her off. He looked at me with pure venom. You're enjoying this, aren't you? You planned this. You trapped some rich psycho just to get back at me. 1. Do-Hyun sighed. It was a sound of disappointment. I really didn't want to ruin my suit, he murmured. Before I could blink, Do-Hyun moved. It was a blur of motion. He swept Ethan's leg, a precise, brutal kick to the back of the knee. Ethan crumbled. He hit the floor hard, landing on both knees with a sickening thud. Ack, he screamed. Do-Hyun didn't stop. He grabbed a handful of Ethan's hair and yanked his head back, forcing him to look up at me. Apologize, Do-Hyun commanded, his voice cold as the grave. Ethan was panting, tears of pain pricking his eyes. He looked up at me, the woman he had discarded, the woman he had called worthless. Now he was kneeling at my feet while my husband held his life in his hands. Ethan choked out. I'm sorry. Louder, Do-Hyun said. And be specific. What are you sorry for? I'm sorry. Ethan yelled, his voice cracking. I'm sorry I touched you. I'm sorry I was rude. Do-Hyun looked at me, raising an eyebrow. Is that sufficient, my love? I looked down at Ethan. 3 years ago, I would have given anything for him to look at me, just once. Now, I wished he would disappear. It's enough, I said quietly. Let him go, Do-Hyun. He's not worth the effort. Do-Hyun released Ethan's hair, shoving him forward. Ethan sprawled onto his hands and knees, gasping. You heard her, Do-Hyun said, wiping his hand on a silk handkerchief he produced from his pocket. He dropped the handkerchief on Ethan's back as if he were a trash can. She showed you mercy. I would not have. Do-Hyun turned his back on Ethan completely, dismissing him as a threat. He walked back to me, his face transforming instantly from demon to angel. Let's go, he said softly, offering me his arm. I made reservations at Jungsik. I know you like the sea urchin. I took his arm, feeling the solid, warm muscle beneath the expensive wool. You're terrifying, you know that? Only to them, he whispered, kissing my temple. Never to you. We turned to leave. But Ethan wasn't done. His humiliation had curdled into stupidity. As we reached the door, Ethan scrambled to his feet. You think this is over? He screamed at our backs. You think you can just humiliate me and walk away? I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to find out who you are, and I'm going to bury you. Do-Hyun stopped. He didn't turn around. He just checked his watch. A Patek Philippe that cost more than Ethan's father's house. Director Min, Do-Hyun said calmly, not even raising his voice. Yes, sir. Call the bank. Call the oversight committee. And call the logistics union. Do-Hyun paused, then added, kill the company. Strip it for parts. I want Carlisle Logistics dissolved by the close of business today. Understood, sir, Director Min said, tapping furiously on his tablet. And Min? Sir? Freeze his personal accounts. And his father's. Let's see how much noise he makes when he can't buy gas for his car. Done. Do-Hyun finally looked back at Ethan, who was standing there, mouth agape, processing the words. Welcome to the real world, Mr. Carlisle, Do-Hyun said. Try not to drown. We walked out of the boutique, Do-Hyun's hand firm on the small of my back. The silence that followed us was heavy, the kind that usually accompanies royalty or disasters. I could feel eyes on us, shoppers whispering behind their hands, security guards bowing their heads as we passed. But I didn't look at them. I was too busy trying to keep my legs from shaking. As we reached the glass exit doors, I heard a voice screech out behind us. It wasn't Ethan. It was Hannah. Shut up, Ethan. Just shut up. I paused, glancing back instinctively. Ethan was red-faced, struggling to stand, still shouting about lawsuits and his father. But Hannah Kim looked like she had seen a ghost. Her face, usually perfectly pale with makeup, was now ashen. She was gripping Ethan's lapels, shaking him. You idiot, she hissed, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry. Do you have any idea what you just did? I told him off. Ethan barked, brushing her hands away. Who does he think he is? He is Park Do-Hyun. Hannah screamed, switching rapidly between English and frantic Korean. Mike and Name, you crazy bastard. That isn't a businessman. That is the Dokebi of Mapo. The Shadow King. My father pays protection fees to his subsidiaries just to keep his restaurants open. Ethan blinked, his confusion cutting through his rage. What? Protection fees? You mean, like the Mafia? Hannah backed away from him as if he were radioactive. If he says your company is dead, Ethan, it's dead. You need to call your father. Now. Before we both disappear. She turned and ran. She didn't wait for him. She didn't look back. She clattered away in her heels, terrified to be seen standing next to a man who had just insulted the most dangerous man in Seoul. Do-Hyun didn't even turn his head. He just guided me through the revolving doors and into the crisp autumn air. She seemed smarter than him, Do-Hyun noted dryly as the valet scrambled to open the back door of the matte black Maybach waiting at the curb. Most people are, I murmured, sliding into the plush leather interior. The car was a sanctuary. The moment the heavy door thudded shut, the noise of the city vanished. The tinted windows turned the afternoon sun into a soft, amber glow. It smelled like cedar and expensive leather, the scent of safety. Do-Hyun slid in next to me. The moment we were alone, the mask of the ruthless king dropped. His shoulders slumped slightly, and he let out a long breath. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my breath hitch. "Let me see," he commanded softly. I knew what he wanted. I unbuttoned the cuff of my cashmere sweater and rolled up the sleeve. There, on my forearm, were 4 distinct red marks. Fingerprints. They were already beginning to darken into a bruise against my deep brown skin. Do-Hyun stared at the marks. He didn't touch them at first. He just looked, his jaw tightening until a muscle feathered in his cheek. The air in the car grew cold again. "He touched you," Do-Hyun whispered. It sounded like a prayer for violence. "With his filthy hands." "It's just a bruise, Yobo," I said, reaching out to touch his clenched fist. "It'll fade." "The mark will fade," he said, his voice ragged. "The insult will not." He lifted my arm, bringing it to his lips. He kissed the bruise, his lips soft and warm against the tender skin. Then he kissed my wrist. Then my palm. "I should have broken his hand," he murmured against my skin. "I should have taken the hand that touched you and crushed every bone until it was dust. And then you would have gone to jail," I said, running my fingers through his dark hair. "And I don't look good in prison orange visiting you." He chuckled, a dark, low sound. He looked up at me, his eyes full of that terrifying, consuming love that still overwhelmed me sometimes. "You look good in everything," he said. "Or nothing." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. "Do-Hyun." "I missed you," he said simply. I was in a meeting with the Minister of Trade. Boring old men talking about shipping lanes. All I could think about was your laugh. And then Daesung texted me. He pulled me closer, lifting me effortlessly until I was straddling his lap, my legs on either side of his hips. The partition between us and the driver was up. We were in our own private world. I buried my face in the crook of his neck, inhaling him. This man. This powerful, terrifying, beautiful man. I was scared, I admitted, my voice muffled against his suit collar. Not Ethan. But of the feeling. Being back there. Feeling small. Do-Hyun's arms tightened around me, holding me like an anchor in a storm. "You are not small, Benita. You are the sky. You are the ocean. You are everything." He pulled back to look at me. "Do you remember the night we met?" How could I forget? It was a year after Ethan had dumped me. I had clawed my way back from rock bottom. I was working as a consultant for an international art gallery, trying to secure a sponsorship for an exhibit. I had walked into the VIP lounge of a charity gala, wearing a dress I had rented, feeling like an imposter. And there he was, sitting alone in a booth, looking bored and dangerous. He had looked up, locked eyes with me, and I felt like I had been struck by lightning. He didn't care about my rented dress. He didn't care about my empty bank account. He sent a bottle of champagne to my table and followed it up with a conversation that lasted until 4 a.m. "I remember," I whispered. "I spilled red wine on your shoes. And I decided right then that I would ruin anyone who ever made you feel like you had to apologize for existing," he said fiercely. He leaned in, his lips brushing mine. It wasn't a demanding kiss, not yet. It was a promise. A reassurance. "I am here. You are safe. We are untouchable." My phone buzzed again in my purse, breaking the spell. I pulled back, breathless. "Sorry." I fished the phone out. It was a text from Brianna, my best friend back in Chicago. "Girl, why is hashtag Aurora Mall incident trending on Korean Twitter? And why does the video look like your ex getting dropkicked by a K-drama lead?" I laughed, the sound bubbling up from my chest. "You have to see this." I showed the screen to Do-Hyun. He glanced at it and smirked. Trending, he mused. Good. Let the world see. It saves me the trouble of sending out a press release. Press release. I raised an eyebrow. What is the headline? Local Mafia lord kicks ex-boyfriend in Versace store. Head of Park Holdings defends wife from harassment, he corrected, nipping at my lower lip. Sounds more corporate. The car began to slow down. I looked out the window. We weren't at the restaurant. We were pulling into the private underground entrance of the Hanamdong Hills, the most exclusive complex in Seoul. I thought we were going to Jungsik? I asked. Do-Hyun's eyes darkened. The playfulness vanished, replaced by a raw, hungry heat. I lost my appetite for food, he said, his hand sliding up my thigh, resting possessively on my hip. Seeing you put that man in his place, seeing you stand tall, it did things to me, Benita. He leaned close to my ear, his voice dropping to a whisper that sent shivers down my spine. We are going upstairs. I am going to take that cashmere set off you. And I am going to remind you, very thoroughly, exactly who you belong to. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. And Ethan. Ethan is already dead, Do-Hyun said, reaching for the door handle as the car stopped. He just doesn't know it yet. Forget him. Focus on me. The door opened. Do-Hyun stepped out and turned to offer me his hand. But as we walked toward the private elevator, my phone rang again. It wasn't a text this time. It was a call. I didn't recognize the number, but the area code was local. Hello. I answered, stepping into the elevator. Benita? The voice was frantic, breathless. It was Hannah. Hannah? I frowned. Do-Hyun watched me, his eyes narrowing. Benita, please, she was sobbing. You have to tell him to stop. Please. My father just called me. He said the bank is calling in all his loans. He said men in black suits are at his restaurant right now. They're shutting us down. I felt a chill run through me. We left the mall 20 minutes ago. Benita, tell your husband to stop. Hannah shrieked. Ethan is an idiot, I know. But don't destroy my family because of him. I dumped him. I left him at the mall. Please. I looked at Do-Hyun. He was checking his emails on his phone, looking completely unbothered, as if he hadn't just dismantled two families' livelihoods in the time it took to drive across town. I started to speak, but Do-Hyun gently took the phone from my hand. He put it to his ear. Miss Kim, he said. His voice was polite, almost bored. I could hear Hannah's terrified gasps on the other end. Choose your company more wisely next time, Do-Hyun said. Then he hung up. He handed the phone back to me as the elevator doors opened directly into our penthouse. The sprawling view of the Seoul skyline greeted us, the Han River glittering below. Why? I asked softly. Hannah didn't do anything. She stood by and laughed while he humiliated you, Do-Hyun said, walking toward the wet bar to pour a glass of whiskey. Complicity is a crime, Benita. In my world, there are no bystanders. He turned to me, glass in hand, the golden liquid catching the light. Now he set the glass down. Come here. I walked to him. I didn't walk as a victim, or as the scared girl I used to be. I walked as his wife. Do-Hyun didn't grab me. He didn't pull. He simply waited until I was inches away, the heat radiating from his body like a furnace. Then, he placed his hands on my waist. His thumbs dug in slightly, possessive and grounding. You are shaking, he whispered against my forehead. It's the adrenaline, I admitted, my hands resting on the lapels of his vest. And guilt. Hannah. She was crying, Do-Hyun. She chose her side, he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. She stood next to a man who spat on you and she laughed. Now she pays the price of admission to that circus. He lifted my chin, so I had to look him in the eyes. Those dark, endless eyes that had seen things I could only imagine. Benita, listen to me. I built this empire in the shadows so you could live in the light. But if someone tries to drag you back into the dark, I will burn their world down to light your way back. Do you understand? I understand, I breathed. Good. His gaze dropped to my lips. Now, stop thinking about them. They are ghosts. Be here. With me. He kissed me then. It wasn't a gentle kiss from the car. It was hungry, claiming, stripping away the rest of the world until there was nothing left but the taste of whiskey and him. He lifted me onto the marble counter of the wet bar, stepping between my legs, pressing me close until I could feel the frantic beat of his heart against mine. For the next hour, the city of Seoul didn't exist. Ethan didn't exist. The only thing that mattered was the weight of Do-Hyun's body, the rough slide of his hands against my skin, and the way he whispered my name like it was the only word in his vocabulary. When we finally moved to the bedroom, the sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the penthouse. We didn't turn on the lights. We didn't need to. The next morning, the sun hit me like a spotlight. I stretched, reaching out for the other side of the oversized bed, but the sheets were cool. Do-Hyun was already up. I sat up, pulling his silk robe around me. It swallowed my frame, smelling of him, and padded out to the living area. Do-Hyun was sitting on the terrace, a cup of coffee in one hand, his tablet in the other. He was wearing casual clothes, gray sweatpants, and a fitted black t-shirt that showed off the intricate ink sleeve on his left arm. He looked domestic. Peaceful. Until I looked at the TV screen mounted on the wall. Breaking news, the anchor announced in Korean, the headline scrolling in bold red at the bottom. Carlyle Logistics files for immediate bankruptcy following a federal raid. CEO Horace Carlyle hospitalized for suspected heart attack. My hand flew to my mouth. Do-Hyun heard me. He didn't turn around, but he lifted his coffee cup in a silent toast. "Morning, Jagia," he said, his voice rough with sleep. I walked over to the TV. The screen changed. Now it showed a chaotic scene outside a trendy restaurant in Gangnam, Hannah's father's flagship location. Tax officials were carrying out boxes of files. Hannah was visible in the background, arguing with an officer, looking disheveled and terrified. Kim Dining Group under investigation for tax evasion and money laundering. Insider sources say the tip came from an anonymous corporate whistleblower. Anonymous, I said, turning to look at my husband. Do-Hyun finally turned to me, a small, innocent smile playing on his lips. "I have very civic-minded employees, Benita. They see a crime, they report it. You destroyed 2 families in less than 24 hours, I said, walking out onto the terrace. The morning air was crisp. I expedited the inevitable, he corrected, pulling me onto his lap. Ethan's father has been cooking his books for 5 years. Hannah's father has been dodging taxes for 10. All I did was turn on the light. He nuzzled his face into my neck. Besides, today is a big day. I didn't want you distracted by trash. He was right. Today was the day. The launch of the Phoenix Rise Foundation. It was the project of my heart. After I got back on my feet, I swore I would build something for women who had been where I was, abandoned, financially abused, left with nothing. Do-Hyun had funded the initial setup, but I had built it. I had done the work. And tonight was the inaugural gala at the Grand Hyatt. "You're right," I said, smoothing his hair. "I have to get ready. The press will be there. And so will I," he promised. "Standing right behind you." The Grand Hyatt Seoul ballroom was transformed. It looked like a dream, gold and crimson decor, thousands of white roses, and a banner that read "Phoenix Rise, reclaiming your future." I wore a gown that made the cashmere set from yesterday look like rags. It was a deep, shimmering gold, strapless, with a slit that went up to my thigh. My hair was styled in old Hollywood waves, and around my neck sat a necklace Do-Hyun had given me for our first anniversary, a single, massive ruby surrounded by diamonds. I stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces. Diplomats, celebrities, business tycoons. And in the front row, looking at me with unmasked pride, was Park Do-Hyun. 3 years ago, I said into the microphone, my voice steady, I had $17 in my bank account. I sat in a cafe in Mapo, wet from the rain, wondering if my life was over. The room was silent. I had been told I wasn't enough, I continued, my eyes scanning the crowd. I had been told I was a burden. But I learned something in the rain that night. Rock bottom isn't a grave. It's a foundation. Applause broke out. Polite, enthusiastic clapping. I smiled. The Phoenix Rise Foundation is for every woman who needs to remember that she can fly. As the applause swelled, I stepped down from the podium. Do-Hyun was there instantly, his hand finding the small of my back. Perfect, he whispered. You were magnificent. I was nervous, I admitted, taking a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. You hit it well. We mingled for an hour. I felt like I was floating. The donations were pouring in. The support was overwhelming. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel like an ex-girlfriend or a lucky wife. I felt like Benita. But the universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. Or maybe it was just Ethan's audacity that knew no bounds. A commotion at the entrance of the ballroom caught my attention. Voices were raised. Security was moving. Sir, you cannot enter without an invitation. I need to talk to her. Get your hands off me. My stomach dropped. I knew that voice. Do-Hyun stiffened beside me. Stay here, he said, his voice dropping to that lethal register. No, I said, gripping his arm. No scenes, Do-Hyun. Not tonight. This is my night. He is ruining it. Then let me handle it, I said. Please. He looked at me, hesitating. Then he nodded once. I'll be right behind you. We walked toward the entrance. The crowd parted, sensing the tension. There, struggling with two of the hotel security guards, was Ethan. He looked wrecked. His suit was wrinkled, his tie missing. His eyes were bloodshot and wild. He wasn't the arrogant man from the mall anymore. He was a desperate animal. When he saw me, he stopped struggling. Benita, he shouted, his voice cracking. Benita, please. You have to stop him. The music in the ballroom died down. Everyone was watching. Phones were coming out. I stopped 10 feet away from him. Do-Hyun stood a step behind me, a silent sentinel of death. Ethan, I said, my voice projecting clearly. You are not welcome here. I can't access my accounts. Ethan yelled, tears actually streaming down his face. My dad is in the hospital. The feds are tearing apart our house. Hannah won't answer my calls. You did this. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You vindictive bit. Do-Hyun took a step forward. The air crackled. But I held up a hand. I didn't do anything, Ethan. You did this to yourself. I just made a comment, he sobbed. I just wanted the jacket. Is that worth my life? Is that worth everything? It wasn't about the jacket, I said, walking closer until I could smell the stale alcohol on his breath. It was about the years you made me feel like I was dirty. It was about yesterday, when you tried to make me feel small in front of the world. You wanted to be big, Ethan? You wanted to be important. I gestured to the cameras pointed at us, to the most powerful people in Korea watching him break down. Now you're the center of attention, I said coldly. How does it feel? Ethan stared at me, his lip trembling. He looked past me at Do-Hyun. Please, he whispered to my husband. Please, Mr. Park. I'm begging you. I have nothing left. Do-Hyun looked at him with zero sympathy. You have your life, he said. Which is more than you deserve. I suggest you leave Seoul before I decide to take that too. Ethan slumped. He looked defeated, broken. But then, a flicker of that old, toxic entitlement sparked in his eyes. He realized begging wasn't working. So he decided to try the one thing he thought he still had, power over my emotions. You still love me, he spat out, a manic grin forming on his face. That's why you're doing this. You're obsessed with me, Benita. You married this monster just to get my attention. Admit it. The room gasped. I stared at him. Really stared at him. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger. No hurt. Just pity. Ethan, I said, a small smile touching my lips. I don't hate you. I don't love you. I don't think about you at all. I turned to Do-Hyun. Yobo? I think the trash needs to be taken out. Do-Hyun smiled, a genuine, proud smile. He snapped his fingers. Daesung and Jin-woo materialized from the crowd. They didn't ask nicely this time. They grabbed Ethan by the arms and dragged him backward. No, Benita. Benita, wait. Ethan screamed as he was hauled away, his heels skidding on the polished floor. If you're enjoying seeing arrogant exes get exactly what they deserve, I heard a guest whisper near me, you have to love this woman. I turned back to the room. The silence was heavy. Do-Hyun stepped up beside me. He took my hand and raised it to his lips, kissing my knuckles in front of everyone. Shall we dance, Mrs. Park? He asked, his voice loud enough for the room to hear. We shall, I replied. The orchestra struck up a waltz. Do-Hyun pulled me into his arms, and as we spun onto the dance floor, leaving the memory of Ethan in the dust, I knew one thing for sure. The past was dead. And the future? It was golden. The adrenaline from the gala didn't wear off until we were back in the penthouse, high above the sleeping city of Seoul. My feet were throbbing from my Jimmy Choo heels, but I felt weightless. Do-Hyun helped me out of my coat, his hands lingering on my bare shoulders. The heavy oak door clicked shut, locking out the noise, the press, and the pathetic image of Ethan being dragged away by security. You're quiet, Do-Hyun murmured, pressing a kiss to the sensitive spot just below my ear. Regrets? I leaned back against his solid chest, closing my eyes. No regrets. Just disbelief. Did that really happen? Did the man who told me I was worthless just beg me for his life in front of half of Korea? He did, Do-Hyun confirmed, his voice vibrating against my spine. And he will never bother you again. He turned me around, his dark eyes searching my face. But Benita, you must know, tonight wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. The universe does not like unpaid debts. He took your dignity. Tonight, you took it back. The ledger is balanced. I reached up, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. You balanced the ledger, Do-Hyun. You tipped the scales. I am merely the instrument, he said, capturing my hand and kissing the palm. You are the will. We didn't sleep much that night. There was a desperate, consuming energy between us, a need to reaffirm that we were here, we were real, and we were untouchable. When I finally drifted off, wrapped in his arms, I didn't dream of the past. I dreamed of fire. The next morning, the reality of my new life set in. I woke up alone. This wasn't unusual. Do-Hyun ran a conglomerate that operated in time zones I couldn't even name. But there was a note on his pillow, penned in his sharp, architectural handwriting. My queen. I have meetings to ensure the dust settles in our favor. Dealing with the cleanup. Take the day. Go to your foundation. See what you have built. I love you. D. I smiled, pressing the note to my chest. He knew exactly what I needed. By 10 a.m., I was walking through the glass doors of the Phoenix Rise Foundation building in Itaewon. It was a beautiful space, open, airy, filled with natural light and soft colors. It was designed to be a sanctuary. My assistant, a bright young woman named Gio, met me at the front desk. She looked flustered. Mrs. Park. You're here early, she stammered, clutching a tablet to her chest. I couldn't stay away, I said, looking around at the women sitting in the waiting area. Some looked tired, some looked scared, but all of them looked hopeful. How is the first official day going? It's busy, Gio said, glancing nervously toward the private consultation rooms. The phones haven't stopped ringing since the gala broadcast. Donations are up 400%. But we have a situation. My smile faded. What kind of situation? There is a woman, Gio whispered. She's been waiting since we opened the doors at 8 a.m. She refuses to leave until she speaks to you. She says she knows you. Did she give a name? Hannah Kim. I felt a cold jolt in my stomach. Hannah. The woman who had stood by Ethan in the mall, laughing at my pain. The woman whose family business Do-Hyun had dismantled with a single phone call. Where is she? I asked. Conference room B. I told her you were busy, but she's... Gio hesitated. She's crying, Mrs. Park. A lot. It's okay, Gio, I said, smoothing down my blazer. I'll handle it. I walked to the conference room, my heels clicking on the polished concrete floor. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I opened the door. Hannah Kim was sitting at the long table, her head in her hands. She looked nothing like the polished, arrogant woman from the mall. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, her face was devoid of makeup and puffy from crying, and she was wearing a simple gray tracksuit. No Gucci. No Chanel. When she heard the door close, her head snapped up. Her eyes widened. Benita, she breathed out. She scrambled to her feet, almost knocking over her chair. Mrs. Park. Thank you for seeing me. I stayed by the door, my hand on the handle. You have 5 minutes, Hannah. Give me one reason why I shouldn't call security. Please, she sobbed, rushing forward, but stopping when I raised a hand. She fell to her knees. Literally. Right there on the floor. I have nowhere else to go. My father kicked me out. He said I ruined the family. The accounts are frozen. The restaurant is closed. The press is camped outside my apartment building. And you think this is my problem because? I asked, my voice cool. Because of Ethan, she wailed. He lied to me, Benita. He told me he was the victim. He told me you were crazy. I didn't know. I didn't know he abandoned you like that. I swear. You knew enough to laugh at me in the mall, I reminded her. You knew enough to enjoy the show when you thought I was powerless. I was stupid, she cried, wringing her hands. I was arrogant and stupid, and I'm sorry. But please. I'm scared. Ethan is. He's lost his mind. I stepped closer. What do you mean? Hannah looked up, her eyes filled with genuine terror. Last night, after security threw him out of the gala, he came to my place. He was banging on the door, screaming. He smashed my windows. He said it's not over. He said if he's going down, he's taking everyone with him. She swallowed hard, shivering. He blamed me. He blamed you. He blamed your husband. He kept screaming about how he made you and how he was going to unmake you. I felt a chill run down my spine. Ethan had always been a narcissist, but I had never thought he was violent. Then again, desperation changes people. And Do-Hyun had taken everything from him. A man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind of man. Did you call the police? I asked. I tried, Hannah sniffled. But by the time they came, he was gone. Benita, please. I don't want money. I need protection. I know what your husband is. Everyone in Seoul knows what Park Do-Hyun is. If Ethan is crazy enough to come after you, he'll come after me first because I'm an easier target. I looked at her. Really looked at her. I saw myself 3 years ago. Terrified. Alone. Begging for help. The difference was I had been innocent. Hannah was not. But the Phoenix Rise Foundation wasn't built for perfect victims. It was built for women who needed a way out. I walked over to the table and picked up a box of tissues. I handed it to her. Get up, I said softly. She looked at me, stunned, and slowly climbed to her feet. You can stay here, I said. We have emergency housing in the East Wing. It's secure. Do-Hyun's men guard the perimeter. Hannah burst into fresh tears. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. I don't deserve it. No, I agreed. You don't. But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because I refuse to be the reason another woman ends up on the street. Even you. I pressed the intercom button on the wall. Gio? Please take Ms. Kim to the guest quarters. And tell the security team to be on high alert. As Gio led a weeping Hannah away, I felt a heavy weight settle in my stomach. Hannah's warning echoed in my ears. He's going to unmake you. My phone buzzed. It was Do-Hyun. Hey, I answered, trying to keep my voice light. I'm at the foundation. You won't believe who just walked in. Hannah Kim, Do-Hyun said. He didn't sound surprised. He sounded tight. Tense. How did you know? I have eyes everywhere, Benita. I know she entered the building 14 minutes ago. She's scared, Do-Hyun. She said Ethan came to her house last night. He's threatening violence. There was silence on the other end of the line. A long, heavy silence that made the hair on my arm stand up. Do-Hyun, stay at the foundation, he commanded. His voice was different now. It wasn't the voice of the loving husband. It was the voice of the king of Seoul. Do not leave the building. Do not go outside for lunch. Do not step foot past the security desk. Why? I gripped the phone tighter. What's going on? Because, Do-Hyun said, and I heard the sound of a car door slamming in the background. My men went to Ethan's apartment this morning to encourage him to leave the country. He wasn't there. So his apartment was empty, Benita. But the walls were covered in photos. Photos of who? I whispered, though I already knew the answer. Of you, Do-Hyun said, his voice dropping to a growl. Hundreds of them. From 3 years ago. From last week. From yesterday. He has been watching you for a long time. And he bought a gun yesterday afternoon. My blood ran cold. I am coming to get you, Do-Hyun said. Daesung is already moving to secure the lobby. Lock your door. The line went dead. I lowered the phone, staring at the beautiful, sunlit office that suddenly felt like a cage. Ethan wasn't just a bitter ex. He was a predator who had been waiting for the right moment to strike. And by humiliating him, by taking away his money and his pride, we hadn't just defeated him. We had pulled the pin on the grenade. I locked the office door. The click of the deadbolt echoed like a scream in the silent room. I backed away, my heart hammering against my ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4. I tried to breathe. I tried to remember the grounding techniques I taught at the foundation. But all I could see was the memory of Ethan's face at the gala, twisted, desperate, unrecognizable. And all I could feel was the phantom weight of a target painted on my back. I moved to the window, peering through the blinds. Down on the street in Itaewon, life was moving normally. People were walking, laughing, and drinking coffee. They had no idea that a man who had lost control was somewhere nearby. Suddenly, 3 black SUVs screeched to a halt at the curb directly in front of the building. They moved with military precision, blocking the entrance, creating a steel wall between the foundation and the street. My phone buzzed. I'm here. Come down. Now. I watched as the doors flew open. Daesung and Jin-woo poured out first, scanning the street, their postures rigid, hands hovering near their jackets. Then, Do-Hyun stepped out. He wasn't wearing a suit jacket. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal the dark ink winding down his forearms. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like a man prepared for anything. I unlocked the office door and ran to the elevator. By the time the doors opened on the ground floor, Do-Hyun was already striding across the lobby, his security team forming a tight phalanx around him. Do-Hyun. He looked up. The moment his eyes found mine, the cold, calculating mask vanished, replaced by a desperate, terrifying relief. Benita. He met me halfway, crashing into me, wrapping his arms around me so tightly I gasped. He buried his face in my neck, inhaling deeply. I could feel him trembling, a fine, high-frequency vibration of pure rage held in check. Are you hurt? He demanded, pulling back to scan my face, his hands gripping my shoulders. Did you see him? I'm fine, I said, breathless. Hannah is secure upstairs. Good. We are leaving. Now. His voice tolerated no argument. He grabbed my hand, interlacing our fingers. His grip was iron. We moved toward the exit. The lobby felt like a tomb. As we reached the glass doors, Do-Hyun paused, his body tense as a coiled wire. He looked at Daesung. Is the street clear? We have eyes on all corners, sir. The path to the car is secure. Move. We stepped out into the afternoon sun. The air was cool, but sweat prickled my hairline. The distance from the door to the open door of the armored Maybach was maybe 15 feet. It felt like 15 miles. Daesung was at the car door, ushering us forward. Benita. The scream tore through the air from the left. It was ragged, desperate, and terrifyingly familiar. I froze. Do-Hyun didn't. In a fraction of a second, Do-Hyun ripped me off my feet, swinging me behind him, placing his broad body directly between me and the direction of the voice. Secure her. Do-Hyun roared to Jin-woo, pushing me toward the car. But I looked over his shoulder. I had to see. Rushing out from the narrow alleyway between a bakery and a convenience store was Ethan. He looked horrific. His expensive clothes were torn and stained. His eyes were wide, manic, rimmed in red. He was sprinting toward us, his hand reaching into his jacket pocket. You ruined everything. Ethan screamed, his voice cracking. It ends today, Benita. It ends. He never finished the sentence. Daesung moved instantly. One moment Ethan was rushing toward us, the next he was restrained and forced to the ground with controlled precision. Jin-woo joined him just as quickly, securing Ethan before he could react. It was over almost as soon as it began. No chaos. No spectacle. Just trained men doing exactly what they were meant to do. Do-Hyun didn't move toward the car. He let go of me and walked slowly toward where Ethan was on the ground. Do-Hyun stood over him. He looked down at the man who had terrorized me, the man who had plastered my photos on his wall and bought a weapon to harm me. Do-Hyun's face was completely blank. It was the face of a judge delivering a verdict. Did you really think, Do-Hyun said, his voice terrifyingly quiet, that you could walk onto my street, threaten my wife, and remain standing? Ethan turned his head, his cheek pressed against the dirty pavement, looking up at Do-Hyun with pure hate. You think you're a god. Do-Hyun crouched down, not caring that his expensive trousers touched the street. He brought his face inches from Ethan's. To you. Do-Hyun whispered. Yes, I am. Do-Hyun stood up and turned his back on Ethan, dismissing him completely. He looked at Daesung. The police are 5 minutes out. Hand him over. Make sure they know about the apartment. And the purchase he made yesterday. Yes, sir. Do-Hyun walked back to me. The tension was gone from his shoulders, replaced by that intense, unwavering focus that always made my knees weak. He cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs tracing my cheekbones. It's finished, Benita, he said softly. He will never breathe the same air as you again. I promise. I looked past him. Ethan was no longer shouting, his strength finally gone as authorities arrived in the distance. He looked small. Pathetic. The monster under the bed had been dragged into the light, and he was nothing but a sad, broken man. I looked back at my husband. The man who had shut down a city block, deployed a small army, and stood ready to shield me with his own life, even though he made sure he didn't have to. Let's go home, I whispered. 6 months later. The wind on the terrace of the Namsan Tower restaurant was crisp, but I didn't feel the cold. I was warm, wrapped in Do-Hyun's suit jacket, which he had draped over my shoulders. We were celebrating. The Phoenix Rise Foundation had just opened its 3rd location. We were helping hundreds of women across Korea start over. You're staring, Do-Hyun said, smiling over the rim of his wine glass. I'm admiring, I corrected, reaching across the table to take his hand. The city lights of Seoul glittered below us like a sea of diamonds. Did you hear? He asked casually. The trial concluded today. I felt a slight tightening in my chest, but it passed quickly. Ethan? 15 years, Do-Hyun said. Mandatory psychiatric facility. He was declared unfit for regular prison. I nodded slowly. It felt distant, like a story about someone else. And Hannah? I asked. She's running the kitchen at the Busan shelter, Do-Hyun said. She's good at it. She asks about you sometimes. Maybe I'll visit, I said. Someday. I looked out at the skyline. My city. My home. I thought about the girl who sat in that 24-hour cafe 3.5 years ago, soaking wet, counting coins for a coffee. She felt so alone. She felt so worthless because a small man had told her she was. I squeezed Do-Hyun's hand. He squeezed back, solid and permanent. Do-Hyun? Yes, my queen. Thank you, I whispered. For seeing me. When I couldn't see myself. He raised my hand to his lips, kissing the diamond wedding band that sat on my finger. I always saw you, Benita. From the moment I saw you in that rented dress, looking ready to fight the world. I saw the fire. I just helped you light the match. He stood up and offered me his arm. Come, let's go home. I took his arm, feeling the strength of the man who had reshaped his entire world just to make sure I was safe inside it. We walked out toward the private elevator, leaving the past where it belonged on the ground, in the rearview mirror. The future was wide open. And it was golden. Thank you so much for watching Benita and Do-Hyun's story. If you enjoyed this journey of heartbreak, intense revenge, and protective love, please destroy that like button and subscribe for more dramatic Afro-Korean romance stories. And remember, the loudest threats often come from the weakest men. True power doesn't need to scream. It just protects what it loves. See you in the next video.